Alright everyone, I was in Belgium this weekend for the European Championship, and all I can say is if you ever have the chance to go to one of those bigger events, may it be a YCS or one of those EWCQs, NAWCQ, it doesn't matter, just go. It's such an epic time, and just to meet up with so many people that have the same passion for this game as you, it's just beyond me. But funny thing that also happened was through my way in this epic weekend, I got to top 128 of the tournament. I think it was the first time they ever did a top 128, so it was rather large. So even someone like me could top the event. But we had a cool pick. I think the Danger Tearlament deck. I think it's a very strong deck right now, probably the strongest in terms of power level. The consistency is maybe not always the best, but it was a very cool pick for the event. I have to give a shout out to Peter and Flo, who you already know from like various videos on the channel, who basically helped me build the deck, and also Flo, who gave more or less the initial idea, because I was honestly on a different deck before the event, which I also want to talk about, sort of take you through the process, maybe before we go into the list itself. I was actually on Lunar Light Tearlaments before, I think maybe 3 days before the event. And here's the reason for this. I felt the Lunar Light engine worked really well in tandem with the Tearlament engine, because if you get access to the Lunar Light engine, you also get access to the Tearlament engine, and vice versa, because Lunar Light has a very cool card that lets you mill 5 card. It's a Bujin rank 4 Exceed monster, and maybe I will go into the details of that deck in another video, but I felt it was a really good pick for the event because it was rather consistent. It had a bit more breaks, but it didn't lose to the evenly matched, it didn't lose to Dark Ruler as much, and it couldn't get super polyed. So those were some reasons for the Lunar Light deck. But when Flo came around with this deck, it just seemed so powerful and so consistent in what it wanted to do for a very specific interaction that I want to go over later in the video, which I think that not everyone has played in the event. I think was definitely correct to do. There are some cards missing in the deck. I had to borrow some of them for the event, but we'll still go over the deck in real life because I just think it's Yu-Gi-Oh culture at this point. The reason why we even chose to play this deck in the first place was because in terms of power level, this deck outshines the Sprite deck so much, and we felt everyone was going to be playing the Sprite deck, and this has a really good matchup. Even though it's not as consistent as the Sprite deck, it still offers a lot of unique ways. It's very unpredictable. Going second, we found a way game 1 without non-engine to break the Sprite board, which I think was personally the biggest argument to play this deck in the first place. You will see it in a moment what I mean, but also the danger cards are so nice because no one negates dangers if you have 6 cards in hand going second with their Toad or with their Red. So you just start extending and start playing from there, and you can trigger your effects in the meantime. So that's why I think this deck is so good. And it really reminds me of the Danger Thunder Dragon deck back in the day, which of course I loved very much. Alright, let's go through the cards themselves. So, like I said, a few cards are missing, but I think for the deck profile it will be enough. So, 3 Rhino Heart, 3 Sharon, 3 Merly, 3 Halfness. None of these are really negotiable. They're your engine, you want to draw them as much as possible. You also want to keep your deck count as low as 40 as possible. One thing about Halfness, I never activated this on my opponent's turn during the entire tournament because I was scared of Triple Tactics Talent. So if this whiffs and your opponent activates talents, basically you lose the game from there automatically. What I saw in some deck profiles, what I thought was a really good idea that I hadn't thought about during the tournament, was that game 2 and game 3 you could still activate this on your opponent's turn because they might have sided out the Triple Tactics Talent. I think in the earlier rounds this is not a good strategy because many of my opponents even read my cards, and they maybe they would assume that we still play, like the talents would still be good. But I think if you go onto the higher tables as the tournament goes on, this card really becomes good going second again. And then the Merly is so good because it enables the Sprite Elf, which we played, and makes this deck a lot better in my opinion. So for the field spell, of course, we played 4 field spells. Obviously, I had those borrowed because they're really expensive. But yeah, the field spell is so good. You just have to max out on it, even if you draw multiples of this. Like, it's better than to draw none. In the mirror match, this really decides over who wins the game most of the time because you can start running over their stuff so easily. Even your Kaleido Heart gets bigger than theirs. And this card is so important to play at a maximum count, in my opinion. And then for the trap, we played 3 Sulliek, no Meta Noise, because Meta Noise is not a good card to discard with your dangers or to mill with your Tearlament effects. This card is so good to draw. It's so good to have. It's a permanent, it sticks on the board, it enables plays on your turn again if they pass to you, because if you have any Tearlament, you can just normal it and send it to the grave with the Sulliek. And yeah, like I said, just discarding with this with Dangerous. Also we play Desires, so having 3 of this, you never really run out of them. Yeah, so good. And the meta noise, it can get ashed, it has a few problems in itself. And honestly, you don't really have problems, in my opinion, to trigger your Tearlaments on your opponent's turn. You have so many ways. You have Curious, you have the Display Elf with Merly, you have Discard, you have Halfness in hand. So there are enough ways to trigger Tearlaments on your opponent's turn. And then to the best supporting engine, in my opinion, this really makes the Tear Element cards so much better and enables you ways to play through cards like hand traps, like Ash Blossom or whatever, so much better than the branded variant can, in my opinion. So the danger count we played is a bit different from the ones you might have seen so far. I don't think it really changes that much. Like, we can talk about how too big for it is very controversial, but in all, like, for your tournament experience, it will not affect it greatly. But there are some pros and cons to playing some dangers or not play them. So 3 Nessie is of course mandatory because it's Aqua and it searches and it's so good. Tsuchinoko, I think, is a bit underwhelming, maybe a bit overrated as well, because this really only makes Curious and makes your Spite Elf maybe sometimes an IP, but other than that can't really do that much. In comparison to Jackalope, which summons a level 4, which makes Dweller or Redoer so easily, these are your level 4s, only 2 Mothman because kind of scared of the mirror match if you don't really want to resolve this on game 1, because yeah, your opponent might just discard a Tearlament card and go off. Chupacabra is nice, more or less a 3rd Mothman because it can revive then 1. And 2 Bigfoot, so we felt Bigfoot was nice. First of all, it's a big beater, so Sprite has problems going over it. This enables really cool OTKs. If this gets discarded, it obviously, we all know from previous formats, this destroys floodgates and deals with all sorts of random cards. Also, in the mirror match, this deals with the field spell, which is really important. And this is really good with Super Poly because, for obvious reasons, right? You destroy an additional card. And then the card that I really liked, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this really overperformed and was completely nuts, was Danger Response Team. Flo wanted to he wanted to kill me for playing this almost, but it was such a good card. For me personally, it's a normal spell. If you activate it, you target a danger monster and another monster on the field, and you bounce both of them to the hand. And if it's in the grave, you can discard a danger monster as cost, and then as the effect, you put this on the bottom of your deck and draw a card. So how this would look in certain scenarios, for example, in the mirror match, you have a Nessie on field. You just activate it in the hand and special it, then you activate the response team, you bounce the Nessie and bounce, for example, the Dragostorpelia or the Kaleido Heart, then you have the Nessie in hand again, you can trigger it again in your hand, or you can activate the effect in the grave, discard the Nessie, put this to the bottom, draw a card, and then activate the Nessie. This was so good all over the weekend. Whenever I drew this card, I felt so ahead going second. But the main reason I played it was because this is a Mystic Mine out, because you can bounce both of your own danger monsters, put them back to the hand, and then the Mystic Mine gets destroyed in the end phase. It also plays around the Beat Cop interaction pretty nicely because, first of all, this gets replaced, so you have another out to mine again later on in the game, but also the mine destroys itself in comparison to the Galaxy Cyclone, which destroys the mine with its own effect. It's not the best mine out, of course, but I wanted to have at least one. It didn't stop me from losing to Mystic Mine Turbo Eldritch in the first round, but it is what it is. This card was really good and I would play it again. Then Once No, this card is absolutely nuts, and with Curious you mostly mill this. I mean, what is there to say about this card? Then 2 Desires, draws 2, you don't really have problems playing it. 1 Called by the Grave. I'm gonna say the same as everyone, this card should be banned. It's so annoying like when your opponent activates this on you, it's just so annoying. Instant Fusion enables all your plays, even if you don't draw any starters. You can summon Mud Dragon with it, which basically makes it so, even if you already have a lot going for yourself, this card can seem kind of redundant, but if you make Mud Dragon, you can just make all your stuff untargetable from impermanent, so your Kicker loss definitely goes through. And then make Dweller or Redoer with your Mud Dragon later on in the turn. And then for the board breakers, last 6 cards of the deck, 3 Dark Ruler no more and 3 Super Poly. Honestly, I thought about not playing Dark Ruler shortly before the event because the danger cards really already do the job of breaking the board so easily. and sometimes you just want to go for the OTK then. And for the interaction that you will see really soon in the extra deck, I will show you in just a second. I think this card might have been a bit redundant. It wasn't even that great for me, but I have to say that one game in particular, it won me the game on its own. So yeah, and it is the best bolt breaker in a vacuum, I guess, with Super Poly, because Super Poly is just insane. And Sprite deck cannot really play around it that much, because if you summon your Tearlament monster and you just normal it and then you announce battle phase or declare battle phase, they have to activate the Sprite Elf, otherwise you go battle phase, make a Kikalos with their Toad and your monster, you trigger your monster in the grave, and then you just run over their Sprite Elf, and it becomes really ugly for them really quickly, so that's why it was really good. Okay, then for the extra deck I played 2 Kikalos. You really need the second one sometimes, and it just it's just way easier to play this way, and you don't really need this spot for anything else at the moment. 1 Kaleido Heart, you don't really need more than one. You can revive this back with your Kikalos even. If you have those lines going, like, this becomes incredibly powerful. 1 Dragostar, it's not the more or less main disruption that you go for, but it is still a nice card to have in your extra deck. You will most likely go for this on your opponent's turn. I never made this on my first turn, I feel like. Really only as an additional disruption. If, for example, they do Dark Riddle no more on your board, then you chain your Sulliek and then you chain your Redoer, because you obviously cannot react to the Dark Riddle, but you just flip your Sulliek, don't activate the effect, because that is legal, and then you use your Redoer to bench itself and make the Dragostapelia, then it's a nice disruption. We played 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp. This card is super good in the mirror match. If you make this dark, your opponent cannot target their Kikalos anymore, so they cannot really make many of the plays that they would like to do. Their field spell is dead, and yeah, this card's just really good, honestly. Just not being able to target your monsters, it then just used this as a level 4 material, very good, and besides all of that, it's also a nice Super Poly target, so what can you say? Garura, you use this during your first turn combo as well. I like that this deck, in comparison to the branded variant, has the opportunity to, or the option to summon this and then link it away to draw an additional card. Makes it super good. We also played 1 Dweller and 1 Redoer. These are more or less the standard ones. We also played 1 Exiton Knight, 1 Evil Swarm Exiton Knight. I never made it the entire tournament, so I wouldn't play it again. And then for the last cards, we played 1 IP Masquerader. You often make this. 1 Dark, because these are just very nice utility cards. You end on this as well to go into Zeraboros later in the combo. We also played 1 Sprite Elf. This card is nuts. You go into this in your turn 1 combo with Merly and mostly Garura is what I used. And then you summon back the Merly on your opponent's turn, so you can mill 3 cards, and then if you end on Curious as well, you can mill another 3 cards here. So you mill 6 cards with your Merly, almost being very sure of hitting one of your Tearlament monsters. So that was really nice. And then we also played 1 Curious, of course, as I mentioned, and 1 Topologic Zeraboros. You can make this with IP on your opponent's turn, and you can chainlink 1 Elf, summon back, and chainlink 2 IP, go into this, and then you summon back the Merly. You use the Merly as chainlink 2 and the Zeraboros as chainlink 1, and then you mill 3 cards and banish everything, and if you hit a Tearlament monster, you can then fusion, so on an empty board. So that's really good. And the very last card we played, which basically broke the deck in our opinion, was, I don't have it here unfortunately, but it was Underworld Goddess. So Underworld Goddess is so good. It does so many things in this format. I want to clue you in. So if you go second versus, I will just put this away for a second to explain this. If you go second versus the Sprite deck, and you open 3 danger monsters, or 2 danger monsters and any other monsters, you reveal them, you summon them, all 3 of them, and what happens then is your opponent will not do anything on this, because it's just 3 random monsters. So what you do when they have their Sprite Elf, a Toad, Red and Carrot, and maybe something like Smashers face down, you just link away your 3 danger monsters and you summon the Underworld Goddess, using the effect to negate their entire field. The Underworld Goddess is unaffected by card effects unless they target it, so Toad and Red don't do anything, Smashers cannot out it, and you can start playing from there. And that is the way we broke Sprite boards going second without any engine, just with danger monsters. So basically you can say the 3 monsters in general out the entire sprite board if they do the usual board, which that was just incredible. And we found out about this maybe 2 days before the event. Philip, you know him from previous videos, of course, he was the one telling us about it. And this interaction alone won me, I think, two matches. So it was so good. And then you can also, with the Underworld Goddess, in their turn, you can negate the Ronin Totem, and this becomes like a tower-esque monster because they don't really have that many outs to it. Zeus cannot out it. Efficiently, at least, they have to crash into it, which they usually cannot do because they can only summon in the main phase too. So this card was so good, and I would definitely play it again. It was also the main reason we chose to play this variant of the deck. Honestly, the side deck was probably the weakest part of our deck. We really rushed it. We didn't have time to build one. We were all really busy in the week before the event, and we kind of had to submit it 5 minutes before the event. And I think with a better side deck, I might have been able to win the top 128 match. My side deck, or our side deck, was definitely not built to build ThunderTheory, which kind of just sacrificed that matchup, underestimating maybe a bit how popular it was going to be. So what we played with was 3 Sphere Mode. This card for me personally underperformed a bit. I summoned it twice versus the Spite board, and I lost both games, which I don't know. It was a bit weird. It was also not that easy to out. So for yourself, I mean, because you can't be targeted and you can't attack this card. So I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't play it again, even though I know that in theory with the danger monsters and everything, it's so good. But I don't know. Then we played 3 Gamma, 1 Driver. I negated the Shifter on my turn versus the Grand Marshal deck, which instantly won me the game. And the theory behind this was, in the mirror match, you want to have something versus Dweller on your own turn. So you hold this in the mirror match, and if they don't have Dweller, they will activate Redoer. So this card will always get the full payoff, which, yeah, I don't know. I never resolved it, honestly, because I only played 3 mirrors, and one of them was the branded tier variant. This card, in theory, I think is really good. I would play it again, but wasn't the craziest in the tournament in terms of how many times I summoned it, but then again, it won me a game on its own, so in theory, I really like this card. Then we played 1 Harpy's Feather Duster and 1 Red Reboot. Reboot is absolutely mandatory because of MathMech, because if they resolve the trap, it can become really weird, and then Harpy's Feather Duster for the trap decks. This was our only spell trap removal, so we also sacrificed Mystic Mine a bit, because you cannot possibly consider everything, even though I feel like in hindsight we should have played Twin Twister, because it would have overlapped with the ThunderTheory matchup as well, and maybe the Sphere Mode is a bit overkill because we already play Super Poly and Dark Ruler, and the Underworld Goddess interaction makes the Splice matchup that much easier. So I don't think the Sphere Mode was maybe that needed, even though I sided this versus ThunderTheory as well, and in the top 128 match this would have worked, where you basically, they end on Empen and Barrier Statue, and you just declare battle phase, and if they summon the Apex Avian to negate the evenly in the battle phase, you could just Sphere Mode them. So I think maybe that would have been a nice interaction, but didn't come up for me because I only played versus 1 Thunder, and in that game I didn't draw the Sphere Mode. We also played 2 evenly matched. This this card completely underperformed for me. It wasn't really all that good. We felt in the mirror match we're gonna side this, and obviously versus trap decks and Exorcister maybe. I didn't end up playing any Exorcister. That deck really fell off in the tournament, I feel like. So I don't know, this card was a bit weird. Also 2, also drawing this with your dangers is not really that good. It doesn't really work with danger that good well, so I wouldn't play this again. We played 3 Skill Drain. Skill Drain was super nice, honestly. Druid versus Flunderies in game 2, so that won me the game, and Druid versus Splight in round 9. Game 2, so, and then it also won me the game. So Skill Drain was nice for what it did. You can play under this, definitely. It's not the biggest problem. You can also out this yourself with the field spell if you really need to. The last card was Cowboy. This card was pretty reasonable. I won 2 matches because of it, and I felt many people were on the sort of like burning cards or whatever you want to call them, so this was a pretty good card, just as for everyone else. I will hopefully see you in more videos very soon. Maybe explaining the Tearlaments Lunalight deck. I think that might be something interesting to look at. Alright, that's it from me. Hope you guys loved it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.